Hey Megan. Hi
Hey,
Jackie.
Steffi. Hey,
How you
Jackie.
doing?
Hi.
How's everybody
Welcome.
doing?
Great.
Who we got, Miss Megan? You want to do a little intro? Who we
I
got
would
tonight?
I would love to do an intro. I'm just warning everybody. I'm terrible introducing. So, we are here with my friend Jack. I call her Jackie. Um, Tell them your last name because I'm not even going to try.
Sicoli.
And she is coming to us from Virginia. And we met how many years ago? 15, maybe 10?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, at the Young Horse Dressage Trainer Symposium.
Yeah.
And you've had your business for 18 years. She developed and owns and manages Peace of Mind, and it's also Peace of Mind Equestrian Academy, located in Virginia, if I haven't said that before. And what I love the most in your bio is your goal to inspire a new generation of young riders. Like that just warms my heart. Like we need you. And you have done many things. You have medals, you've taken students to shows, regionals, you've developed them into professionals. So, welcome. I want to hear first, tell us about your story. How did you get into horses? And then, how did you decide you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Megan. And it's been great to know you all these years. And that was a long time ago before children were even a thought. And that was a really exciting program too, where we met at the Hassler's location in Maryland. And I actually started riding when I was 10 on Long Island. I was sort of the typical, like, love all animals. I think I had, like, in my bedroom, a parakeet, a lizard, a bunny, um, all the things. I worked at a pet store, which, like, was back then before Petco was like this little homegrown pet store where my bosses were both like super, super nerds. One of them actually had a PhD. And so I just really loved animals a lot. And so when I went for my first lesson, I just wanted to stay at the barn all the time. And it's really fun to like remember those days because when you have children, you all of a sudden start thinking a lot about like where it started for you and what and like how did you learn and like and it's um, I think that there's so much about the industry that is different nowadays, um, and so it is hard to compare, but I spent so many hours at the barn, um, and I was really lucky to start working for someone that had been trained in the British Horse Society. And so she had a really, really strong background in horsemanship. And she instilled in me like the importance of the level of care for the horses. And it's just been something that I think has been like the pillar of my life, even like more than my business. Like I just, the way that I always feel that the horses have to be treated really came from her. And she was located on Long Island. That's where I grew up. And she was back then, she was just actually rescuing horses. She was getting horses off the track. I was little. I started riding at 10. I was riding off the track thoroughbreds probably by 12 years old, including competing them at their first horse shows. And I don't even know. I don't even know how I had the courage to do that, because we all know how serious that can be to take a horse off the track and retrain it, and how important that is. And it was all about any horse at her barn it didn't matter if it was retired or if it was an off the track thoroughbred. It was about treating it 100% with whatever it needed. And like the horse was always right. So I can remember having, you know, a lot, I had a lot of accidents, and never feeling like I wanted to stop riding, and never feeling like it was something that the horse had done wrong, but like just learning from all those experiences. And so she's actually a really important person now. She runs one of the largest nonprofits on Long Island for rescuing horses. It's called it's Amaryllis Sanctuary, and she'll take, you know, any horse, and they just keep it forever. It never ever will leave their sanctuary once it goes there. So she was able to really continue to like make more serious that goal of hers to protect horses and to make sure that they were taken care of and treated well. And so now I think there's a lot more rescues, and it's a lot more common to kind of talk about the idea of rescue. Back then, I felt like it was like her, you know, without a nonprofit, just going to the auctions and getting horses that would have ended up somewhere bad. So that was a really, like, I'm so thankful for that start. I was with her for several years, and I competed lots of ponies and off the track thoroughbreds, just in like anything local, just to get them doing stuff. And that was in the hunter jumper discipline. And then from there, I went to some other also really great trainers, Debbie and Darlene Wilcox. And I think that their facility is still in existence on Long Island as well, and was there for several years. Debbie was a dressage rider. And then Frank DiMarcico was another trainer of mine who I'm still in touch with. He's still like an amazing trainer, and has like a huge youth population of hunter jumpers. And he's like was such a great support, such a positive person. I rode without stirrups like all the time. Like the bigger that I wanted to jump, the more that I had to ride without stirrups. And so I feel like I definitely got a lot of foundational, like, again, another person that was really instilling, like, you have to be better, and doing that through lots of flat work and lots of, like, challenging the rider with different exercises and stuff like that. So I think there's so much good in the horse industry with so many professionals that are wanting to do right by the horses. And I feel like all through my childhood, I was just really lucky to have those kinds of mentors. So let's see. So after that, I started in the hunter jumper world, and I like moved all the way up from whatever it is, like beginner, is then maiden and novice, and limit and open. I don't even know if all those divisions exist anymore, but I did compete in the Medal McClay at the very end, and that was really a big deal. It was also a huge. I can't believe I was able to do that, because my family was not like financially, really wealthy or anything like that. And so I just remember like working off so much of my lessons and my leases. I somehow got like sponsored for a lease on like, it's hard to remember all these things, but it was like one of the Firestone's horses. So she had like a string of a bunch of horses and had like an extra one that she didn't ride, and I ended up being able to compete Medal McClay on that horse. I don't even know how that happened. It was like just a really great thing. But And so then I went to college. I really was wanting to become like a doctor or a veterinarian or something like that. And I studied biochemistry. I went to Northeastern University. I really, really loved the co-op system at Northeastern University, and I had a lot of really, really cool jobs that I can talk about forever because I love clinical settings. So I worked at Harvard Medical School. I worked at Brigham and Women's Hospital. I worked in labs. I cloned a gene. And so that was like before you could just do high throughput and you could clone like a whole animal in like one sitting. I actually was isolating the genes of ice fish. So my mentor at the time would travel to Antarctica and like catch these fish and then bring them back. And we would use, I'm not sure if I remember what technique it was to isolate that, but I remember like seeing it light up. And then it was significant because ice fish have some like ancestral hemoglobin genetics. And so that was like important research for like finding those early genes for hemoglobin. Yeah, so and I worked when I worked at Harvard Medical School. We were doing also some microbiology and molecular biology. I used to walk over to the hospital from where I was, our office, and I would sit outside of the emergency C-section room, and the nurses would hand me the hot placenta from a birth, and I would take cord blood from the placenta, and then I would like walk back across the street over the lab to the lab, and I would use the centrifuge to isolate certain cells, and then we would grow them up in tissue culture. I had like a special recognition that like during that time I had grown up the most amount of colonies. Like I was very competitive about it. So I was like, oh, but so there's another birth. I'm heading over there. And so I was very successful growing lots of tissue culture colonies from the cord blood. And we differentiated the cord blood, which is sort of like mixed cells, into mast cells, and then we did studies on the mast cells for asthma research. And I actually ended up 4 years ago being diagnosed with severe asthma, so it was sort of an interesting coming around to all the science again. But I loved the clinical settings, and so when I went, I finished my degree, and we were considering going to graduate school, and turned out that in undergrad, I did not love testing, so that ended up being kind of a stress point for me, and so I was like, I'm not sure that I really want to go to graduate school yet. And at the time, hi Georgia. At the time, my husband and I met at the time in undergrad. And so he was studying biomedical physics. And he knew that he definitely wanted to go to graduate school. And so I was like, well, I think I need to wait. I think I can't go to graduate school. And we had actually driven from Boston across the country, and we had gone to University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and Wisconsin at Madison, and we had seen all these amazing campuses, and it seemed so exciting. I wanted to study immunology. That's like my favorite science topic. But then I just like something instinctually, I think, was just like, I don't know, I can't do it. I don't think that's really what I want to do. And I want to go back to riding, and I want to go back to horses. And I had while I was in school and in Boston, I actually had done some riding while I was getting my degree, and it was really hard to do that because I would like walk to the bus and then take the bus out of the city because if we didn't own a car. And during that time, I got a certification for natural horse trimming, and that's actually when I first started to learn about natural horsemanship. So it's a really long time ago. That would have been like 2000. And so that was really before natural horsemanship was kind of like a term, like a popular term. And but it was all in line, I think, with my background of wanting to understand more about horses and do the best for for the horses that we could. And so I still can actually trim my own horses if I want to. It's such hard work. So I usually don't, but I did learn how to trim horses and keep them barefoot. And I learned, how to ride in a rope halter, and I rode bareback like primarily during that time period. And I knew that I didn't want to go back to the same industry because I had jumped basically as big as I wanted to. I was not interested in doing like the big jumpers or anything like that. And so I was in my mind, I was like, well, I'd already done like dressage, because like one of my instructors told me that we were doing dressage sometimes. So I probably already know dressage. So I'll just start like, working for a dressage trainer. And I went to New York to work for Beth Sproul Hansen. And she kind of did everything. She had a breeding stallion. She raised baby horses, and she had her own training facility, and it was her own property. And she was training to Grand Prix. At the time, she was just getting, I think, to the place where she was competing that stallion Da Vinci at Grand Prix. And another one of her horses that she had competed, I think, to I Won or Grand Prix, she had sold just before that. So she was doing a lot of really great things. And I remember thinking that I like already knew how to do dressage, and then and then all of the lessons to get me to sit differently, it took forever. She probably wanted to kill me half the time. But she had a great background. So she had worked for one of the trainers from the Spanish riding school. And so that's where I learned lunging technique. And so she gave me lots of lunge line lessons, and in a very classical sense with like, side reins and no stirrups and stretching your arms and all that kind of stuff. And I had a little Connemara pony that that I started competing while I was working for Beth at first and second level. And he was kind of like a typical pony where I think he had competed through fourth level, but he like wouldn't do anything if you were not sitting correctly. So I was still sitting like half out of the saddle. So sometimes he didn't do it the right way, and it was totally my fault. And so, but it definitely made me feel like that was a good choice to go the dressage route. And during that time period, I decided not to go to graduate school at all. And my husband, we were not married yet, but he ended up going to Princeton for his PhD. So we moved to New Jersey after working in New York. And I worked for a few different people. I worked for Andrew Philbrick. He still has quite a large, successful show jumping business in Princeton. I rode some of Chris Kapler's horses. So they were good friends, and so sometimes in the off season, Chris Kapler's horses would like come over to his facility, and that was basically like my job when I worked for Andrew, was to flat all the horses and to supple them. And Chris Kapler's horses could all do canter pirouettes and tempies, and that was really fun and amazing. And riding all of them was so cool. They were super powerful, really strong horses, and so I had a really good time working for Andrew, which ended about when my dad died. So at that time, I took some time to see my dad, and he was sick, and he ended up dying of cancer, but we were still located in New Jersey because the PhD takes forever to do that. So I was stuck there with with Luke, living in this like really tiny apartment that they have since like all raised. Like the entire graduate like housing doesn't even exist anymore where we used to live, because it was literally falling apart and like so bad that yeah, I think it was created in like the 1940s. It was like army barracks, and then they just never even upgraded them and just like let the graduate students live there. And so in our house, which was really tiny, we had one central heating unit, and it looked like a hair dryer that was sitting straight up, and it would blow hot air. And that was the only thing that was heating the house. So anyway, so he was at Princeton doing his PhD in engineering, and after working for Andrew, I worked for Gabrielle Armando, and all along I had become aware of Heather Mason, and she never returned my emails because she's probably so busy. And so finally, I tracked her down at the New Jersey Horse Park. This is a true story. She was at a horse show, and I literally like approached her and was like, "Hi, Heather, I want to work for you." And she said, "Yes, I guess." And then I started working for her. And so that was a really fabulous time of my life. It was a very stressful time because it was very hard work, and I worked excessively. But her barn was extremely busy. She taught about 18 lessons a day. They were all half an hour. You were lucky. You were happy when your half an hour was over because your lessons were so hard. And she even rode her horses only for half an hour. That was it, half an hour a day. And at that time I was working there, Heather had already made about 14 Grand Prix horses. Some of them she had started under saddle herself. Some of them she had like an Anglo, I think one of her first Grand Prix horses was an Anglo-Arab pony. So the Ben Schlonquist, that she had trained with some of the old colonels. So she had grown up in England, I think, until she was a teenager, and been educated there as a rider, and then had worked or had taken lessons with some of the old colonels that were located in New Jersey once her family relocated there. But she was also probably just a little bit of a prodigy, like a self-trained. And so her business is called Flying Change Farm. She still is there. She's still doing the same exact thing as that she was before. She just keeps making horses. I would guess that she's probably made 18 or 20 Grand Prix horses by now. She still rides young horses. I started a lot of horses when I was there, including one of her Grand Prix horses. Lincoln was one of the horses I started under saddle. And I learned so much. I learned how to train horses up the levels from the very beginning. So all winter when other people were going to Florida, that's when we would start all the babies when it was 20 degrees. And Heather would sit in the corner with like popcorn and like yell at me because I was scared usually. But but we would start, I would say we probably started maybe 10 every winter, maybe more. And so I was, during that time, there was other riders, and she had several Grand Prix riders and several judges that rode with her. So I was just like her working student during that time period. And I started from the very beginning. I brought a horse that I had bought from Beth. So I bought a young horse. I probably bought her when she was a yearling. Actually with from like some money that when my dad died, I bought myself a horse and I got married. Those are the two things that I did. And I wouldn't probably have been able to do either of those two things without a little bit of money that came from him passing. And so I brought my young horse that was just turning 3, I think, to Heather's, and she lived out in the field. And I started her there with Heather. And then I started riding one of the schoolmasters that was like already quite aged and hadn't been used a lot. And so we started, his name was Figaro, and he was a Ramiro. So he's a very big bodied, old style, warm blood, and I am 100 pounds soaking wet. And so he had been through, he was a very experienced horse. He was imported already, probably competing at FEI. And so I started riding him he was 18. And I started at first level, and I ended up competing him through intermediate and learned a ton. He had a great sense of humor. If I was not doing the right thing in the middle of my test, he would just yank the reins out of my hands for like a few strides and then go right back to work. But I learned so much about really sitting a horse down, and there was no way that a 100-pound hurt person could, kind of muscle that kind of horse. So I really learned to use my seat, and that's what Heather's whole program was all about. Really developing your seat and riding from your seat and riding forward, to the hand. And so that was really helpful. And that was how I first got up the levels, was on that horse, Figaro. And when I ended up continuing to train, Della was her name, was my young horse. And so I trained her to 3rd level and competed her to 3rd level, and then ended up selling her to a client later. But during that time, that's when I started my business, was when I was working for Heather. And she was kind enough to, if she was too busy, she would hand over, or like, she would say like, oh, I'm too busy for this person, or, I don't travel anymore. So I sort of started to build my business from the extras that she couldn't handle. And that's where I first coined the phrase Peace of Mind Dressage and started an LLC. I was working for Heather. Obviously living in Princeton and commuting about an hour to Heather's. I was working 6 days a week, probably about 11 hours a day. And that was when there wasn't horse shows. And then when there was horse shows, it was on top of that. And then on the extra day that I had off, I would be teaching my own students. And eventually I reduced my hours at Heather's and started like traveling more. And in New Jersey, I never ended up like leaving Heather's and starting like a facility or anything like that. So I was just staying at her farm and continuing to get tons of opportunities riding and competing sales horses and other horses and stuff like that. And then my first students in New Jersey were fabulous people, and they actually had PMU foals that they had. Are you familiar with that term, the Premarin farms that I think are outlawed now, but they were in Canada at the time. And so and so basically in order to keep the horses pregnant, they would keep getting them in foal, and then the foals were basically discarded. And I'm not sure if in the beginning maybe they were even like euthanizing the foals or something like that, but they eventually realized that they wanted to try to make sport horses out of them, and so they would have different draft crosses, and so a bunch of the PMU foals had come like to New Jersey on a truck or something, and my first group of clients all owned PMU foals, and so I started them all. I don't know, there was maybe 6 or 7, and I started them off from and got them all going under saddle. We sold some of them. Some of them are still owned by the same people. I competed one of the horses through second level, I think, at the time. And when finally we had to leave New Jersey, I was very sad actually to leave Heather's crew and all the business that I had built. And we moved down to Maryland so that Luke could start a position at Hopkins. And so he was the deputy director of the Global Water Institute for 7 years at Johns Hopkins. And so we lived in Baltimore, and eventually we moved out to Frederick and bought a house. And so I had to totally restart. So I was able to buy Figaro from Heather. And at the time when well, that's a good question. I don't remember how old he was at that point, but I had competed him through Prix St. George or I-1 at that time, but I didn't want to leave him behind. So I bought him, and then Della was at about third level by that time. And so I moved both horses down to Maryland and just boarded because I had, I didn't have my own barn or anything like that. And I was riding them, hoping to develop new students in Maryland, which I did. And then I would go back up to New Jersey a few days a week to teach my old students. And so that's kind of how I started and like kept myself going. And during that time at Heather's and then coming down into Maryland, I also got my L. So I went through the L program. That would have been about 12 years ago now, I think. And so I graduated with distinction from the L program, and the USDF L program is a fantastic learning opportunity. I mean, it was really, really fantastic to have that opportunity to meet lots of judges, learn their methodology. The testing is pretty rigorous, so you really have to know all the terms, you have to know the training pyramid, you have to really understand all of that kind of terminology in order to get through the L program, and there's a lot of opportunities. I was really lucky during that time. I apprenticed for tons of S judges. Heather was an S judge at the time. Marilyn Payne and Ken Barbosa, and a lot of really great judges. There's actually a program in Eastern States Dressage Combined Training Association hosts every year a judges forum. It's called the Judges Roundtable, and I actually will still go back sometimes for it because it's just so great. So they'll have, usually like 4 panel judges, and we watch videos, we learn any new rules that are coming down the pike, and they just go like through the whole room. Usually there's about 50 judges there, and they'll just go through the whole room, and you have to like say what the score was, or what, like if you agreed, or whatever. And so that's a really great forum that still is in existence, and is an absolute great opportunity for education. So moving down to Maryland, I had my L. I think I had my silver by then. I had gotten my bronze several times over on many different horses. And I just started building my business at two different boarding facilities, and so that I would call that like freelancing, because I didn't lease a facility, and I was traveling to my students. I did usually have an agreement at one point to like have stalls that were like kind of reserved more for my students, so I could have some security there. I think I had maybe 7 horses at one barn and 7 or 8 at another barn, and the 2 barns were maybe 10 minutes apart. And that's what I did for, I like started that process of building that new, it was still Peace of Mind Dressage. I made my website myself in 2010. And I just built that business at those barns. I think for about 7 years, I was doing the freelancing.
Now,
So, yep.
Question for you. Did
Yep.
you start an LLC?
Yeah. So from the very beginning. Yeah. So when I was in New Jersey, I started an LLC.
Okay.
And I did have like an accountant or an attorney help me with that. And then when I moved down to Maryland, there was some procedure to like change states with the LLC that I had to go through. Yeah. And in Maryland as well, you need to be registered if you're a boarding barn. And so I didn't have to do that yet in the frame of the story. But every state has different requirements for businesses. And so even now in Virginia, we have certain requirements related to our LLC that we have to keep current every single year, and there's fees that have to be paid and things like that. Yeah, so I've had the same name of my LLC from the very beginning. When I started it would have been, I think, 2007 is when I opened my LLC.
And question about that. Why
Yep.
did you pick LLC versus S Corp? Like, did you get some business advice, and from who?
Yeah, so I'm an S Corp now. And so let's see. I've used a few different business attorneys, and one of them that was helping me in Maryland is actually a really good friend of mine, and she doesn't operate in Virginia, so she can't help me anymore, but she was able to help me with some of the things like that. And also the S Corp, there are some differences. And I actually am, I know that in the S Corp, I need to be an employee of the business in order to be like, correct. And so that's like, I have to be receiving a paycheck, and in order to be like one of the presidents of the corporation, I also need to be an employee of the corporation. And I think that the purpose of changing from an LLC to an S Corp was related to how we qualify all of the business write-offs and stuff like that. So I've always had an accountant from the beginning. When I started, I've never done like all of my tax stuff by myself. And so we had an accountant in New Jersey that was helping, and then he, I think, worked for me still for a while when I moved to Maryland. And I had an attorney in Maryland who also helped me write contracts. Eventually, I did end up leasing a facility, so then I needed boarding contracts and things like that, and she helped me with those. And helping like with all of the like to actually file the taxes and figure out how to do deductions, and how to like if you have your trailer, for example, like every year your trailer depreciates, so like that has to be done in a formal sense, and so that's way above my pay grade. So I keep everything very very clear, like I have a business credit card and I have a business account, and I don't mix the funds from my business account and business credit card at all. And so, um, when I did have, after freelancing for a while, um, freelancing, I found extremely financially unrewarding and really hard to keep going. And so I was looking for a while for like a different situation. And the other aspect of what I wanted to change at the time, this is kind of like another evolution of the business, is that I really wanted to feel like I was taking care of the horses that I was training. And so it's an important piece, you know, if you're showing up to a lesson and you're not sure like what the horse ate, or if it drank, or what kind of hay it's getting, or why it's losing weight, or, you know, then it's hard to address certain training issues if you're not aware of the care of the horse. And so I started leasing a facility in 2014. And since then, I have not traveled, and I have not, I've not traveled to teach other than like little clinics and things like that, which I really enjoy doing. I don't travel to individual clients. And I leased in 2014. I started leasing a really large facility. Actually, it was 150-acre facility. We had 3 barns, and there was about 40 horses field boarded on the property that were not my responsibility. But at one time, I had 32 horses in my business, and that was called Woodvale Farms. And so that was, I had working students that lived on the property. I had assistants. I had a payroll probably of about 7 people at the time. And that was a very rewarding, like I liked helping a lot of people. I was really enjoying the process of helping my assistants. So I've had several assistants that started working for me, and, you know, took their horses up the levels. And Michael Deligdish, she worked for me for a year, and she actually competes for Israel internationally now and has a business down in Wellington. And Courtney Swars has a business in Poolsville, Maryland, and she started at Woodvale. Erin Hudson now works for like one of the equine universities in Maryland. And so like mentoring them was really an important part of my career, and I have mentored a lot of women who've worked for me. And the things that I always try to like pass down to them were things that were really important to me. I'm not sure exactly, like maybe it was thinking that I was going to be a veterinarian or a doctor, but for me, education was really important. So I was like, you know, if you're going to be a trainer, you have to have an education, you have to have credentials. So I was very much always encouraging like any of my assistants or my working students that, you know, they should have a path to getting their medals. They should know exactly what they want to do. Do they want to be, which discipline do they want to do? What kind of students do they want to teach? And I think that's like, in my opinion, if you're going to be in the horse industry, it's important to really be clear about your goals, because no matter what, it's going to be hard. And you want to make sure that you're sort of not in the hard forever, and you're able to get to a place where you can, you know, open your own business or be helping other people. Because, you know, that's the thing, is that I would like to be, you know, a horse rider all day long, but it's not going to only earn me business. I have to be able to communicate with people, help other people. I have to be able to sell horses. So we did a lot of horse sales when I was at Woodvale. and we had up to 32 horses boarded within Peace of Mind Dressage at the time. And that was the first time that I decided to like branch out. So I've started, like Peace of Mind Dressage was my original LLC, and then I've started Palm Equestrian 2 different times. And so and that the reason was because, you know, we had so many stalls and not everyone wanted to do dressage. Some people wanted to event, some people wanted to do, you know, other things. And so my 2 assistants were really responsible for doing the, like anyone who wasn't wanting to be very serious about dressage, they were doing sort of like the Palm Equestrian side of things. And so they were helping people. Erin is actually a really capable Western rider, and Courtney had been an eventer before she started working for me. Courtney has continued to compete the same horse, and now I think has gotten her gold on the horse that she originally had brought to training with me. So that's kind of a cool thing. And when we stopped, being able to, when we stopped having our business at Woodvale, I was needing to relocate quickly, and I didn't have anywhere to go with all of the 25 horses that we had. So that was a time when Courtney broke off and started her own LLC. And so we sort of divided the business at that time. And I moved as many horses, I think 12 or 14, to one facility and continued doing Peace of Mind Dressage. And then she started All's Well Equestrian with kind of the other half of the business.
Well, hey, I'm here.
Hi.
It wouldn't unmute. I love how you keep reinventing yourself, right? And like, I think that's such an important thing to address, because like there's so many hurdles that you've gone through and that you can change, right? Like going from hunter to dressage, and now you're into working equitation. Like, and did you find at first it was hard to pivot? Like, were you like afraid, and now you're like, bring it on?
No, it's always hard. It's terrifying. And I think that like it's been, you have to think like, just like, oh, I'm Jackie, and what does Jackie want to do? And then you're also like, what is my business, and what is my business going to do? And then how do I want to spend my time? So there's a lot of different things to factor in. And I think that I would, like right now, what I really wanted, I think, was flexibility. I wanted flexibility to not just do dressage, but I do every day, right? So like every horse in my barn is still trained in dressage, just like they always have been, but maybe they also do working equitation or something, you know, or do a lot of groundwork and horsemanship. And so, and that's really been beneficial, like, because if you have a really strong training background for every horse, like honestly, they can do anything. Like if you put a Western saddle on all the horses in the barn, they could probably go do like a really great, not like barrels or things like that, but they could do Western dressage, or, you know, being able to really connect the horse between your leg and your hand. And those aids, when I also, as I get older, what's sort of fascinating to me is like the commonalities between disciplines. And I'm like, oh, wow, like I should be able to do liberty work. Why not? Like I've been doing this long enough, figure that out. And so I don't really want to be like pigeonholed into one thing, because I have more interest than that. You know, I'm like, well, that's really awesome that, you know, you can, you know, focus a horse through their posture. And a lot of that also has been out of necessity. And so when I originally this year kind of talked about on Facebook, on social media, deciding to do some working equitation, it was out of necessity because I have my personal horse hasn't enjoyed competing in dressage, and he doesn't particularly like to travel to shows, and he has also like a lot of ups and downs and skin and tummy issues and things like that. And so I wanted to feel like I was really doing something fun with him and really progressing. And so we can move over and do working equitation like a cross training. And it's all the same things. It's actually the same things and more. And it's an extremely very, very hard sport that you need a ton of collection and control and accuracy to do it well. And so I can move over and I can maybe make it more fun for him to still be doing lots of the same things, like turn on the forehand or leg yield, shoulder in, turn on the haunches, all these things that we need in order to be able to do the obstacle work. But it's more applied, and it's a little bit more fun for him, and it's different every, I can change it up a lot, and he can be happy. And I also felt like that was important for students that like horses, if they're trained well, they should be versatile. They shouldn't be afraid of barrels. They should be able to walk over a bridge. And so that, I feel like that is almost like the kid in me of like, what do you mean? Like, can't you just jump over that log? Like, just because, you're doing dressage. And so just kind of keeping it very diverse for horses, I think, is important for them, and it's also important for people. So I think it's true, like, to say that I, am interested in doing working equitation, but like, I actually haven't even competed in a recognized working equitation competition yet, and I'm just preparing for that. And I'm like, oh, good, one more thing that I can try to do.
When will be your first competition? What are you striving for? What's the goal?
Well, this year, I actually have a pinched nerve in my neck, so I'm currently not riding. And so that kind of sidelined me personally from competing, like, for maybe, I don't know, the next few weeks at least. And so I think I have some students doing a working equitation competition in September. And so we've been learning the rules. One of the first big things is I decided to have to host a working equitation clinician at my barn. And so I hosted Rebecca Alger, and she was fabulous. She was really able to be very skilled in all the dressage, and then also explain in a really accurate way, like, how to approach all the obstacles, which is it's kind of like it's like a really fun thing, because and I learned this because I went to a clinic that Gilberto Felipe was teaching in Maryland, hosted by USA We. And what I noticed about him is that he was totally able to and interested in all of the dressage fundamentals, but the way that he approached all the obstacles was with extreme precision. Like, he knew exactly where he wanted to turn, and exactly where he needed to change the bend, and exactly how far to get from this obstacle or that obstacle. And so that really intrigued me. I mean, he's like the best in the world. So it was like, oh, wow, a really great, like, you think you might want to do this sport, and now you're learning from the best person in the world. And to see how he approaches it and how he's successful is really simplifying the dressage fundamentals for every horse, so that they understand exactly how to do their simple changes and flying changes and everything like that, and then approaching the course in a really methodical way. So it was really great to meet him, and he was so inspiring to me as well. He has children, and his children compete, And so when I met him, he showed me some videos of the kids riding in his barn, and he was just kind of like, oh yeah, like, of course we have like a kids program. And I'm like, what? Like, the best rider in the world has, like, I don't know if I haven't been to his facility. I'm going there in November. But I'm like, the best rider in the world has like kids at their barn. And I think in the US that it's often segregated. And when I spoke with Muriel Forrest, who is a successful entrepreneur here in Loudoun, and she has a kids program and an adults program, and that are all together. I thought it was really like a great point that she made, that like she grew up in England and the adults and the kids all rode at the same barn. And so my most recent business change has been to start a kids program at my barn. And it was sort of because of meeting Gilberto and talking to him and talking to Muriel, and I talked to Eliza Sidner, and I talked to Suzanne Hassler, and I talked to a bunch of working equitation trainers. And I just was really trying to understand how did they make a switch to a different discipline? How did they make decisions in their business? And for me, the business being successful and the Peace of Mind Dressage business was really wrapped up in my own like personal identity. And so I felt like I had to reinvent myself this year. And that was really hard. It's still really hard every day to like get up and be like, whoa, what is my social media going to be today? Is it going to be about the dressage horses, or is it going to be about the kids? And I think that as a business owner, and the horse industry uses Facebook particularly, but social media quite a lot, and you can't ignore the need to be able to communicate about what you do, and in order to gain business, and particularly if you're going to make a shift, right? And so I've made a shift from New Jersey to Maryland, and then a shift from Maryland to Virginia, and a shift from boarding my horses or freelancing to now owning our own farm. So we have our farm in Loudoun County. And from a business perspective, that has been a smarter financial decision. It was a really hard thing to have happened. Thank gosh we bought our farm before COVID, because we never would have been able to afford it now. The prices have gone up so much. But we have a corporation that owns the property, and Peace of Mind Dressage Corporation leases the facility from the other corporation. And so if I don't, let's say, like as a horse trainer, I'm still not rolling in profits here, but the tax benefits of making that financial decision with the two corporations and owning the property adds a significant bump to my income. And so so we did that. That was in 2019.
We had a question from one of our viewers who couldn't quite get it in the chat, so I posted it. She said, you've mastered so many hurdles. What are your motivations or advice for young people finding challenges getting experience in the industry? I mean, you've been able to really work with a lot of really amazing trainers as you came up through the levels, and now you're talking about mentoring young students and things. So can you talk a little about that?
I think that for me, being an entrepreneur is actually really motivating. So I did, when I worked, at in academia, or if I worked at like a hospital, or I worked actually in pharmaceuticals for a short time. I worked, and I just didn't find that very motivating to be working for another business. And so, like, I think that being a trainer and being an animal lover and being a business owner, like those things are all really important to me. And so, like, the challenge of recreating the business or figuring out marketing or whatever, that's been really like a motivator for me. And probably because I've, like, at a very young age, I was supporting myself and like putting myself through college, and I moved out when I was 17 and things like that. So being an entrepreneur, I feel like I'm really in control of things. But it does definitely put you in the hot seat where it's all on you. And so, you know, my husband's always, when he worked at Hopkins, he got a salary, and now he works at a firm and he gets a salary. And so, like, he shows up to work every day and has lots of different challenges and projects, and his job is very hard, but he doesn't have to like think of like where is the next customer coming necessarily in order to actually like pay the mortgage. So that's a hard thing. And I think that for young people coming into being an entrepreneur or being in the horse industry, it's definitely important to consider, like, are you highly self-motivated, and can you figure out, you know, the business side of things. And so when for these, we're coming up on an hour. I have plenty more to talk about if you guys are still interested, or if there's people listening and there's questions and stuff like that. But one of the things that I want to talk about is like how to make these kinds of decisions if you feel like you need to make a change, or if you're a young person and you're thinking about coming into the industry. I think it's really important to understand, like, what could I make per hour? How many clients can I teach in a day? Am I going to be traveling? Am I going to have a relationship with a facility? And when we've made changes to either move or buy the farm, or this recent change with the new website and the addition to the program. So I still have my Peace of Mind Dressage program. I still have my adult amateurs. You know, I'm still a judge, all of those things. But now we also have some kids riding at the barn. And we have some people that can come and take lessons if they don't have their own horses. So those are sort of like the additional things that we're doing. And then we do, you know, horsemanship and groundwork and things like that. So that's kind of all the things that I want my business to do. But I had to kind of sit down and you know, like, really, like, we went over all of the financials for the last, you know, 6 years since we've been here. And we've done this a few times, actually, because there was a time where I was like, forget it, I'm going to be a yoga instructor. And that was 2014 when I ended up getting the lease at Woodvale. But I was like this close to leasing a yoga studio.
I'm going to interrupt you. Don't you
Yeah.
think one of the questions young people should ask is, do you want to be an entrepreneur? I read somewhere that 90% of entrepreneurs should not be entrepreneurs because of the risk, but also all of it is on you. It's so much stress, right? And did you ever ask yourself that question, like, do I want to be an entrepreneur? And when you started your business, did you start with a business plan? Like, now you're going over your financials, but like, did you do that in the beginning? And maybe, like, why is that helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've had to always do it. You have to do it again and again and again. Like, if you have your own business, and the way that the economy changes and the way that prices change for hay or whatever, I think that you have to redo your business plan all the time and say, you know, well, you know, now that the hay costs have gone up, you know, what should my boarding costs be, or how should that change? And I think that being an entrepreneur means that you have to be very responsible, and you really have to understand, like market changes in a way that you would not have to if you worked for a company. And so for me, I definitely feel like, I don't know, I guess I like the pressure of it. Being an entrepreneur and really owning my brand and really being in control of everything is very motivating for me. I think for other people, it might be really comfortable to work for someone else. And I think that it's important to consider that, having a business plan means that you have outlined your costs. It means you've outlined your strategy. You've outlined, like, how do you know you can reach and help the customers that you think that you can help? What are your credentials? Are you really qualified to help people? And so getting like the education, and I know that Megan has also really been continuing in lots of different ways to educate herself, but that was really important to me because I never wanted to be like a trainer that like all of a sudden like hit a limit and like, oh, well, you're just not good enough you can't really help other people because, you don't have enough credentials. But it's really hard, like those years where I went and got my L, and got my medals and things like that. I don't know how we survived, honestly. I mean, we have budgets going back. I remember one of the budget included the quarters that we were using for laundry. So it's very different now. Like, in Loudoun County, things are quite expensive. And so like the quarters for laundry aren't a consideration anymore, but definitely we've had to make a lot of changes to consider the bedding is coming from further away and that the cost of shipping our manure is more expensive because we're an hour from DC. And this area is changing quickly and becoming more developed, which means that farms are moving further away and that land is getting more expensive. And so it's not like being here and having my farm is not like child's play at all anymore. Like I really need to understand all these kinds of things, and so I've gotten better at sending emails, which is really uncomfortable for me actually, but I have to send emails to clients and help them understand, well, hey, is $12 a bale this year, and that's going to affect things. Virginia suffered a drought the last 3 years. And so hay got expensive. We were haying in the summer in our fields. And those kinds of things, it's like breaking your heart to disappoint people, I think, about like what you might have promised that you were going to charge or whatever, but you have to just really figure out constantly like what are your numbers. And so that's exactly what we did. My husband and I sat down a few times in the last year and really said, what are the numbers and what do we have to be charging and how are we going to do that? And at the same time, it was time for me to say, I'm working too many hours and I'm riding too many horses. And that was part of the motivation to change as well, and to figure out how I could, like when I had assistants before, maybe it was because we were at a 100-acre farm and we could have 32 horses and it was attractive for assistants to work for me. But now my barn, we can have tops 16 horses, and maybe that it just became harder after 2022 to attract assistants and that were at like a higher level. And so that's when I was like, well, I think I'm just going to make a change, and I'm going to sort of a little bit, some of the horses in our program are, still getting trained and still getting ridden by adults, and they're doubling as a kid lesson. And then also my instructor, who's fantastic, and she can teach adults and children, but she's not, a silver medalist. And so I felt it was easier to find someone like that who had more of a general horsemanship background. She's competed in a few different disciplines and has, great groundwork skills. And so she can teach great basic riding. And she can also do some chores, and she can help barn manage. And so the business is now just a little bit things are sort of doubling in a way that has been a little bit more financially protective. And so those changes came from needing me to work less, because I'm 45 now, and I definitely was feeling that, there was a part of me was like, oh God, another horse to ride today. And I love horses. So I had to turn around and be like, whoa, why am I having that feeling? Because my body is exhausted and I can't do that many anymore. And I needed to have more left over for my children and my family. And when you realize that you haven't watched a family movie in 4 years, and you have, you're only eating dinner with your family twice a week and things like that, I think you have to start to look at your life and just say, is this what you want? And everyone can have different choices, but those were sort of the things that started to make sense for me of I have to find a way that is more holistic for me and healthier for me. And so I guess for other people that find themselves feeling a little bit burnt out, not feeling like they are jiving with the same customers that they have, over the years, feeling like their message is not being heard, or they have a different horsemanship, philosophy that they want to bring forward. Maybe they want to start teaching a different age group. I think that you really need to be able to communicate really clearly what is it that you want to change, how do you want to spend your time, and that way, if you're feeling like it's really hard to go to work every day, I think it's important to address why is that happening.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, that is so important. What you just said is why are you unhappy? And the question of what do you want to do, and be okay with making changes. Yes. And what is the saying when we're on a plane? Put your oxygen mask on first. You can't help anyone if you don't take care of yourself. And I do feel like we as professionals, or just horse people in general, we're a bit of martyrs. And that, oh, I've done this, and busy is good. I now listen to all my friends and I'm like, really? Are you really happy? I'm happy you're busy. That means money, but does it really? Nothing is worth your peace of mind. I love these questions.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions? Do you guys have any questions for me?
That was Megan tipping it over to me. So we had a comment in the live chat. Somebody said the besties have seen this a lot with other guests, the burnout. I'm curious, how did your family, did they help you come to the conclusion you needed to start, we'll say, coming in from the barn earlier at night, or however that worked out? Because we do see this exactly what you described is what we have heard in so many of these live streams with other guests, is that you know, it's pre-sun up to well past sundown, you know, 365 days of the year. And it's a passion. It's obviously a passion. Nobody would do those kind of hours if it wasn't something that they truly loved and a passion. But what we're seeing across all the different disciplines, from the Western trainers, the hunter jumper trainers, the working equitation people, you know, is it's they're not getting the reward they deserve, and the burnout is real. So and then you bring the family element into it. You're married and you have kids. So I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was really important to me to talk to other people in that same situation. And so, like, when I called Muriel Forrest, she has children as well. And that was one of the reasons why she started her business, was to get her kids riding and to be able to work with her kids. So I think like one of her sons is actually a trainer in her business. And I think that it just started. I don't think that my family they did not come and say, like, Mom, what the hell, you know. I think it just started to feel kind of like, wow, my kids are growing up fast and I'm missing a lot of things, and I'm not reading like the PTO emails, or like the getting to class when there's an opportunity. And that was like heartbreaking to me. And I was like, I know I need to be able to get some hours that are more flexible. And I think that I think sometimes you wait maybe for like your students to accept a change that you might make, and it has to be the opposite, you know, like you have to just be the one to be like, okay, I'm not here on Tuesdays anymore. And however you decide to do that, you know, whether you write an email, or you have like online scheduling and you just block off that time. And I've been using a coach, Jen Verharen, of Cadence Coaching, on and off for about 5 years. And I think that it was really like, I knew I needed someone else to push me on those things, because like I am always wanting to make other people happy. And like, you know, giving a good lesson is so rewarding that you won't eat because you're giving so many good lessons. And I'm like, well, you know, I was getting stuck a lot. No one else's fault. I was getting stuck a lot in those kinds of situations because I'm so motivated to help other people, and so motivated to ride and to help the horses. And I loved my work so much that I realized that, like, I knew, you know, whatever the last lesson was with any given student, like I knew exactly what they had worked on better than I knew what my son was doing at school. And I'm like, well, that's wrong. And so like, and I had done some of this when I initially was pregnant in 2014, 2015. I had 2 assistants at that time. So it was really easy actually for me to work half days. And then all of a sudden, when it became really hard to find assistants, I felt like it didn't matter. If we're going to pay the mortgage, like, I have to be in the arena 8 hours a day. And so I kind of did that until I was like, I think that this is not working for me, and I have to find a way that I'm not the only person that is generating income. And so we do training board basically only. We don't do any straight boarding. And so the combination of those 2 services offset in a positive way, where we can be profitable, but it really was dependent on how many horses we could train every day. And that number without an assistant just was too great. And so those kinds of questions, I think, are important questions for any trainer or anyone with a business to ask themselves and to figure out how to make a shift there so that they are getting, just like any business. I mean, my husband's law firm has, X amount of attorneys, not because they like a lot of attorneys, but because they're utilizing all the attorneys to make money.
Yeah.
And so we can't forget that in the horse industry, we do have to make money and we have to run businesses.
I think it's just like riding. It's a half halt, like we have to keep balancing our own center. Like I don't know how many lesson horses, but I had 5 instructors, and in 1 month, and we were teaching around 150 people, and that's a lot. And 2 of the instructors I unfortunately had to fire, and 2 of the other instructors, we parted ways amicably. But you go from having 5 instructors and then myself to 1, and then myself and 150 clients. And I tried for a month to teach everyone, but the income wasn't coming in and the expenses kept going up. And so some of the horses unfortunately had to be sold. And I was like, wow, I really love having 5 instructors, but I have to rely on people. And then, what am I going to do? That is a risk we as farm owners or entrepreneurs take, and well worth it, but then you have all these risks. It's really hard. So I sympathize.
So when was that? What did you end up doing?
I downsized. So within 1 month, I sold 4 school horses because when you're paying $3,000 in vaccines in 1 month, like, wake up. People really don't understand how much it costs to run a riding school. And I really needed 5 instructors. So, the answer is you have to sell your school horses in order to eat, otherwise the whole ship falls.
Right. Yeah, you've got to balance all the plates.
Yeah. And I think that is the hardest part in my business. I would love to have no people, right? Like that I count on. There's no way I can run a horse business, a farm, with no people. So finding reliable people. And then on the flip side, they would say, well, you don't pay me enough, and that is a great challenge, because like, hey, I'd love to pay them, which I do. I think I pay them fairly. But they also don't know what they enjoy. And I think that's what Eliza has really opened the door for us to now raise our rates, because why can't we, we're like any other business. Why can't we be profitable? Why do we sustain this craziness? And for what? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Steffi.
Yeah, so I have an interesting, well, I don't know what you call it, a scenario. Okay, so took my car in for an oil change, tire rotation, right? We all know, we take it to somebody, we pay them what they pay, right? And we all go, I don't know how to do it. So, we look around for a reasonable price, whatever. But everybody's got a cabin air filter in your vehicle. It filters the air when you turn the heat on or you turn on the vent or the air conditioning, right? So they tried to get me to pay them to change the cabin air filter. It was going to be $100. And I can imagine a lot of people pay it. It cost me less than $20 to get 2 cabin air filters off Amazon. And it took me less than 10 minutes for me to watch a YouTube video and go in and do it myself. And I can imagine a lot of people wouldn't take that effort and would pay that $100. So why is it so hard? Where's the disconnect in people's brains to be like, I'll pay the mechanic $100 to change my cabin air filter, but I'm not paying more than $50 for a lesson or whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever their thought process is. It's like, how did this disconnect happen?
Yeah, it's a
And
great
how do we
point.
change that? How do we change that? I mean, sad thing is that horses are to some extent a rich man's, it's becoming a rich man's sport, no matter whether you ride Western, whether you have a backyard trail horse. Farriers, they deserve to be paid for their skills. As Jackie mentioned earlier, it's hard on the body trimming a horse. Veterinarians, just, you know, it's years and years, decades of schooling. They deserve to be paid their living wage to do what they do, especially when we call them at 11 o'clock at night on a colic emergency, or a cut horse at, you know, 5 in the morning when we go out to feed the horses. All those things, you know, as Jackie mentioned, it's expensive owning a farm. It's gotten really bad in the last decade. It was never easy, but now it's really insane. And yet, Megan and I, how long have we been doing these live streams, Megan? It was since we started it when you were in California, right? So we'll just say January of this year. So we'll say, you know, last 8 months, 7.5 months. And we got people pretty cranked up when we were talking about how industry-wide people aren't charging enough in the equine industry. Doesn't matter what you do, where your equine pursuits lay, what discipline you're in, they're not charging enough. And we got some pretty hostile responses, I would say. Don't you think, Megan?
That's really interesting.
And I think it started from, as Megan mentioned, Eliza had done her, kind of stirred the pot and really got the conversation going with her survey and the discussion thereafter. And I think it's been really good, hopefully, for the industry.
I can't hear you, Megan. Were you wanting to chime in?
I'm muted. No, I love Eliza's discussion. I think it's made people aware of the situation, you know, and as a community, it upsets me to see in our area we have lots of barns, boarding barns closing. And it doesn't mean, oh, they're closing, I'm doing okay. To me, when I see that, that means our industry is suffering, and we collectively, that means Western people need to work with English people. We need to support our whole horse community and figure out how we can thrive, right? And I don't look at this as a bad thing. I think it's a situation that has made us aware of what's happening to barn owners, right? And horse professionals on a whole, and how we need to make some changes. I think it's great. I embrace the change. But, and I also think we as professionals, at least horse trainers, at least the horse trainers I've met and have learned about, that they really don't come in with a business sense, right? And that's one thing that I wanted to bring to Barn Besties, because I do have a good barn sense and a business sense and organization, and I wanted to collectively be a resource for individuals that are starting our next generation. I want to see our next generation do better than we did. You know, I think so. That's my personal goal right now, or my legacy, is I want the next generation to do well and be supported and make better changes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think that the conversation has to continue and evolve. So, because I'm kind of approaching this from like a parent viewpoint now, that like we have children and we sign them up for gymnastics and we sign them up for soccer and so forth. And there's a few things that I find really interesting, is that like the cost that we might pay for my daughter to do gymnastics is actually like approaching the cost of a lesson sometimes, like a horseback riding lesson for kids in our area, and they're not having nearly the overhead. The other thing is that the cost for like boarding a dog, or the cost for small animal vet bills and things like that, those things keep escalating and people are happy to pay. But there is a disconnect between that, you know, I'm going to pay for the gymnastics class. I'm not sure like if there's like a, in their mind, like a threshold of cost or a disconnect of what the service is and all the overhead. But there's definitely like a lack of equanimity there, like a lack of understanding. And then also, I think that you're seeing these changes with the small animal versus the large animal, where they're like families are now spending so much more on their dogs and so forth. I don't see that as being like in opposition to the horse industry, but I'm just like, that's an interesting thing that you think that you should basically be spending like the same amount on your horse as your dog, because like clearly, you know, it's going to cost a lot more to house the horse, to care for the horse, to clean the horse, to, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know where else that conversation goes. I mean, definitely in Loudoun County here, close to DC, you know, there are plenty of people that will, you know, be understanding of boarding rates and how they've increased, and there's still tons of people that are looking, you know, for to get away paying cheap or paying less. And the I get one difference that's really interesting to me, and I'm like, this is just new, you know, is that like for having a training board situation for dressage horses only, I think people understood that, like, the reason for those costs, but working equitation is not yet seen as such a competitive sport in this country yet, that people understand that the working equitation horses, in order to get above L1 or L2, are also going to need to be in training. And that hasn't happened still, I think. And so I think that I've noticed, you know, that, and you guys mentioned that you've talked to other working equitation trainers, but what I've noticed is that the working equitation crowd is getting by with one lesson every month or something like that. And in part, it's a similar thing to like a lot of the dressage industry in this country is below second level. Well, a lot of the working equitation population right now is doing L1 and L2. And so their horses are not really, you know, doing the lateral work and the collection, and they're not really on the bit, and they're not really using their back properly, and all of that kind of stuff. For that sport to grow here in the United States, it's going to require people to realize that, like, you know, those horses to advance in working equitation are going to need correct fundamentals. They have to be fitter. They have to be able to collect. They have to be able to bend. They have to be, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's an interesting like difference that I'm seeing, is like, you know, the working equitation crowd, you know, is willing to show and willing to do some clinics, but in our area, none of them are really in full training or partial training. They're just taking lessons here or there. And so, like, I for sure, you know, can't just change my business over and be like, well, I'm going to be the trainer of all the working equitation horses, because like I have to understand that that's not going to actually happen.
Do you think that that's because working equitation is and I'll say it with the quote marks, very young, very new equine sport in our country? I feel like it's just kind of suddenly popped into a lot of people's awareness, maybe in the last decade or so. Megan and I, there's a farm, not terribly far from us, that beautiful working equitation obstacles and things. But I mean, I don't know that there's a lot. And Megan, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, are there a ton of working equitation instructors in Wisconsin?
I only know Adrian, who we brought on, and she's in northern Wisconsin. I think the farm that's local in our area, they bring in clinicians. I'm not sure that there is a working equitation instructor. So that, and again, I apologize. I'm too busy in my little
Yeah.
neck of the woods.
But it reminds me of when I was a kid and back in the day where the only way I learned anything about horses was all the magazines that I bought or subscribed to because we didn't have the, internet and all the knowledge online like we do now. And, I'll just say back in the 80s, there weren't really that many qualified, talented dressage instructors in the country. It was people who moved overseas from Germany, Netherlands, the UK. And other than that, people were clueless and it was very hard to find. There was no instruction in Wisconsin really for a long time until we got, some judges and things who hung up their hat and were teaching, thinking like Jane, and there were people in Minnesota, and it started trickling in. But I kind of wonder if it just makes me think that working equitation it's going to explode, but I kind of feel like it's in that example of there's just not quite enough instructors yet. And it's great that Jackie, people like yourself are making the leap. You've got the amazing fundamentals, which I think the sport will need of the dressage. And then it's, like you said, learning the rules and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you go to Germany or Portugal or Spain, one thing that you will notice is that the base level of riding is really quite good. Like, the kids are riding like on bit and bending and making transitions, and um, and so I think that that opens up more opportunities to do like a more advanced level of any sport. And so I think that maybe there's a disconnect there. Like, so if I was to talk about like, what's working equitation in Portugal, like the kids are pretty competitive. And I think that they're riding horses that like have a lot of training, and I think that there's a base level of riding the horse balanced and through that we're lacking here. And so it seems like the sort of trail riding community is taking on working equitation as if it's just about like obstacles or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But it's just when you are trying to understand like where is the sport going, I think the sport is going to depend on how many people end up becoming interested in actually training and making their horses fit and that kind of stuff. I think it is actually like a great sport for you to be like, hey, I think my horse can walk over a bridge. Like that's fantastic because it's fun and it's fun for horses. I think when we look at like the future and really making it a business here, I think it's also going to depend on the GMO, frankly. I think that I'm very concerned about the strength of USAW and their level of organization and their I think that it's pretty clear that we have a lot of really great judges and there's a lot of really excellent clinicians and trainers that are active in working equitation, but they're going to require like a well, I guess I was saying GMO. I'm actually just talking about like the big organization, and that they're going to require like a USDF that is able to raise the education of the sport overall, and that'll be interesting. When I went to the Gilberto Clinic in Maryland, there were very few upper level we people that came to that clinic, and it was widely advertised. So that was kind of curious to me, and I started to be a little bit like, wow, how is this USA We going to support professionals? And that's a really important question for the industry, any equine industry going forward, is how is the overriding organization of each sport supporting professionals. I mean, you just look at the Arab industry and how many prizes they give and how many ribbons, and like those trainers are going home with 30 ribbons from every horse show. Well, that really sends a different message than, like the 2 ribbons that I might spend, $400 at a dressage show and come away with. And so I think that it's what can all the industries learn from each other. And I think I don't know the answers about like the future of we and why it is the way it is in the United States, but definitely what it seems like when you go to like Spain and Portugal is that there's a very, very strong sport happening right now, and it's happening at all ages, juniors and adults.
They were the countries where it really got founded, and they've got well, to say generations. I was going to say decades and decades, but it's more than that. It's been generational, and it's cultural. Whereas here in the U.S., I think people, if they think about cultural horse heritage, they think of the Wild West, and that's all they think about is, the cowboys of the Wild West and the Western frontier and how the West was settled. And other than that, do you think we really culturally across the whole U.S. have something as much as Spain is known for a lot for the Spanish riding school, but working equitation, Portugal for sure.
Not at all. I mean, it's totally different, and I've been traveling. In fact, I started, like another venture this year, which is we're taking some riders over to Portugal on a trip, and we're going to be training with a classical dressage instructor as well as 2 working equitation trainers when we're there. And if you're in Spain or Portugal and you're not in the horse community, you're going to have a whole different vacation than if you can hang out with breeders, trainers, because it's really a lifeblood there. And it's and so when we're going in November, we're going to the largest horse festival in the world is called Golega, and it's every November. And it's been happening since like the 1800s, that like all the breeders bring their stock and they trade and they buy, and it's really amazing. It's actually, I mean, as a horse person, it's completely unbelievable. The videos and the photos that I've seen, because I've never been there personally. This will be my first trip to go. It's, let's see how many days. It's like I think it's like 10 days. It's a 10-day event for horses, and like they have this. I think it's called the manga. They have this like big circle arena, and like there'll be someone passaging by. I mean, hundreds of horses. There's people passaging, there's children riding, there's someone driving carriages, all on the manga together. And you're like, how would that even ever happen? Like I feel like, you go to the Frederick Fair and like, the rodeo horse is lame and like the horse gets loose. I mean, like the level of horsemanship that they can have hundreds of horses being ridden next to carriages and everyone is safe. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so yes, I totally agree with you. I think that the like there's an extremely strong base of very high level horsemanship in Spain and Portugal, and the and Golega is just a great example of how well they have acclimated their horses to each other and to just life in general. And you'll see lots of videos of them of like it's nighttime and it's dark and all the bars are open and everyone is wearing their absolutely amazing like traditional like woolen vests, and it's like a three-piece suit on a horse. It's so cool. And they're all drinking and singing, and every horse is lined up standing right next to all the other horses, and there's no kicking and no biting. I mean, it's wild, right? And so there's clearly like a high level of horsemanship there that is extending even beyond like, you know, working equitation or dressage or whatever. There's just like a comfortability of the horses existing amongst other horses and amongst family members and the kids that ride. And I've been interested in Iberian horses for a long time. And at one point we had like 9 in the barn all at once. I think we have three or four now. And there are certain traits that I have noticed that I appreciate about the Iberian breeds. And one of them that I started under saddle is owned by a customer and is still at the barn. She's one of the favorites, Inez. And I mean, she literally, when I started her under saddle, she was like, I don't know what you're waiting for. I mean, she was just like never spooked by the saddle or me being above her or anything. And I'm like, I don't know if that's been bred into her, but it's just like, she obviously, you should ride me. I don't know what you're waiting for. And I had started hundreds of warm bloods before, and they weren't that easy. So that was great.
I was a breeder of warm bloods for a long time, and I would totally agree with you and say that, yeah, they breed the rideability in. And for a long time, when I started breeding, there was a lot of discussion about breeding rideability in, but about the time I kind of got out of it, it was just breeding for the showiest, craziest looking trots, you know, the manufactured insane. I would almost call it like a hackney, a saddlebred, you know, the Dutch harness horse, just insane, showy front ends. And with those stallions that became very popular, that had those traits and were, you know, breeding 300 to 500 mares a year, the rideability was gone. I remember back, now it dates me a while, but remember Ankie von Grusman, when she was showing, she's top rider in the world at for many years, and she got ran away with in award ceremonies. You know, you got a horse with the double bridle on who's supposed to be the most well-trained horses in the world, and they couldn't handle, you know, you talked about what you're going to see when you go to Europe. And, you know, it's a prize ceremony with, you know, how many people in the ring with her? 6, 8, 10, 12 horses at the most. And this horse went nuts, ran off, you know what I mean? So we definitely lost the rideability factor, because I remember breeding in, and I knew, you knew when you bred into a stallion who threw rideability, because it was the exact same thing you talk about. Starting them under saddle, it was like they had been born started under saddle. And when you started getting away from those types of rideability bloodlines, things became dangerous. Starting young horses became dangerous. So
my son learned to ride on this this horse that I started under saddle myself, and she's always, I mean, I've had her, I don't know, she's been I've probably had her for 12, 14 years, something like that. And no one's ever fallen off of her, ever. And it's like she knows he's a kid, and she gives him a certain ride and makes sure that he's safe, and so that's pretty cool. Horses are amazing in general.
Well, we really appreciate your time tonight. If you would ever consider coming back, I would love to talk to you more, because you brought up in your younger years doing the medals and the McClays and the hunter jumpers. And I would actually love to hear more about that. It's not something you hear about really in the Midwest. I had a foot in the door many years ago in that industry. I love hearing about it. I know it's changed a lot, but I think back when you were doing it was probably a pretty cool time. You know, you talked a little bit about riding Chris's, show jumpers and how amazingly well trained they were. That was kind of the era that I had my foot in the door there, and I think it would be really fun to talk about those experiences. If you'd ever consider doing that, I would love to do it. Megan's probably gonna be like, "Oh my God." I
for
would
sure.
love that.
I would love to come and talk after I get back from Portugal.
Oh,
too.
definitely.
Yeah, that
Absolutely.
would be fun.
Yeah, maybe we can regroup sometime after the year when Megan will be out in California. You'll be on the East Coast, and I'll be freezing my keister off here in the Midwest.
Let's do it. And then we can
Yeah.
hear all about your trip and the McClay.
Yeah. Or one or the other, and we can just do it a couple different ways. But we don't have to hear about everything in one shot. But that would be awesome. We'd really love it. And we talked about trying to keep this down to an hour, and we're coming close to 2 hours here. So that is kind of how
Thank you for listening. I mean,
Yeah,
I actually,
fun.
probably just talked forever about things that I'm not sure anyone found interesting about background and so forth, but it was really fun, and it was very. I think it's an excellent thing that you're doing, and something that is really helpful to the industry, and frankly, I love listening to podcasts and things like that. So I think it's a really a great thing.
Well, that's
we're
our
trying,
goal.
right, Megan? We're trying.
We're doing our part. I think everybody needs to do their part, and that's our goal. And we want to support each other and help wherever we can. And thank you for being a part of Barn Besties and doing that.
Yeah, and ask your students and clients to check us out, watch your podcast, and
definitely.
Maybe they've got something to contribute.
Yeah, thanks guys. This was super fun.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I know you've got, as you've mentioned, you've got kiddos, and it's late here, so it's late there. I'm sure you missed them going to bed probably. Are they ready for school yet, or is that starting soon?
Yes, the 21st.
Okay.
Of August.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, we appreciate you're taking pretty nearly a little over 2 hours here with us. So
Absolutely.
almost a 2 hour live. We really appreciate it. If Megan will send me over, I don't think we had your website address in the description, but we'll make sure we get that updated. We've got your long bio is in there, but I don't think I had a website address. So we will definitely get that in there. Do you want to mention it real quick so that it's in the live stream here?
Yeah, our new website is pomequestrian.com.
Okay.
So POM equestrian.com.
Well, thank you. We'll get that updated in the description. So if people want to reach out to you, and I should ask too, just to get it on the video record, do you do clinics? Do you travel and do clinics at all?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I definitely backed off from traveling to clinics and for judging. When I was pregnant and nursing, it was so hard to do that. But I love having, and I'm sure that you guys understand as being coaches and everything like that. It's so fun to meet new students and to help people. So for sure.
Okay, well, that's great. So that way people can reach out to you if they want to get in contact, have you come to a clinic or judge. So we appreciate that. Awesome. Have a great night. We again appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who's been watching. We appreciate it. Right?
Thank everybody. Thank you, Jackie.
Have a great night, everybody. We're going to go ahead and hit the end. So bye, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.